interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, 1993 was your sobriety,
yeah,
right?
it's almost 33 years.
I was
That's
actually thinking Racing for Recovery, you guys are just about ready to do your 25th anniversary.
yeah. Well, it'll be a quarter of a century next April. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how it's come from my basement. I started this in a closet in my house that eventually got repossessed for me trying to keep Racing for Recovery going. But from that to having fax machines, when I was trying to market this to everything it is now, in a quarter of a century, things change, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so bro.
So, we're good?
Yep.
All right. So let's just start with this, and we'll touch on whatever you want to get across too. But let's touch on the. So when I show you these numbers, 35%, and as a being sober since 1993, how does it make you feel emotionally when you're like, hey, we're making some progress in this fight?
It's interesting. I've been around this a long time, been affected by drugs for 58 years. It still saddens me that we still see drug usage at this level. Which doesn't surprise me is the cyclical change of the drug. It's gone from the opioid crisis. Now we're seeing the return of the stimulants with methamphetamine, cocaine, alcohol and weed are pretty consistent. But for me, looking at it from a sadness standpoint, 99% of this stuff is unresolved trauma that still people are choosing whatever substance to cope with that trauma. And that's what Racing for Recovery has been doing, is to help heal the trauma that we can reduce more of the drug addiction.
So does it come down to this, that, okay, so there's a big push in this country right now to, cut off that fentanyl supply, whether it's at the borders, whatever. So these people who are emotionally damaged, they're basically just trying to get in touch. They're trying to use whatever drug that they can get their hands on to numb themselves. Is that what's going on here?
Exactly. If I can't hurt myself because of emotional or mental disturbances with one substance, if they stop that, I just wait for the next self-destructive modality to come up. And one of the things as a clinician, I call it whack-a-mole in our Cleveland book. People, even with laying all the drugs down, which we see, you have a tendency to pick something else up like gambling, which we now know is on the rise. So it's not the modality of self-destruction. It's we need to focus on healing the pain that is leading to choosing some form of self-destruction. That's what we really focus on here at Racing for Recovery. We're not really a drug treatment center. We are a mental and emotional and physical wellness facility.
Right. Let's just touch briefly on how you were able to use physical activity to kind of help you. I don't want to say cure you, because I know you're always be battling those.
Yeah. I've always been athletic. I played hockey for a number of years, and my choices to use drugs eliminated any opportunity in that. But when I picked up the Ironman in 1999, I found something that was extraordinary, but also I could do on my own. And it was kind of my own counseling, because I never received counseling for what I needed, hence me creating what we do. But I knew I needed it. So by exercising, I was improving myself not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, and I will include spiritually as well, that allowed me to go out and seek other avenues in a holistic lifestyle that would enhance my already physical ones. And I still use all of them to this day.
Yeah. Ironman, what are you up to now?
I just did my 128th Ironman in Augusta, Georgia a couple weeks ago. It's crazy.
Is it still, I don't want to say as fun, because it's suffering, right? But do you still enjoy the process as much as you did?
I do. And one of the things I use today with explaining how many I've done is I still want the challenge. It doesn't matter that I did 127. If I won 128, I have to do the work on that day to get it, and I still love that challenge. And during the race, I get 6 hours of solitude where no one can contact me, and I can think of gratitude for what I have, what my body's able to do, and it also gives me time to think on a business level of racing for recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's odd.
it's amazing. I mean, it truly is amazing. But when we're looking at, so 35% decline in opioid overdoses deaths in Lucas County. So what do you attribute this? I mean, because you're on the front line. I mean, you're seeing people coming in dealing with this. I know that people have access to strips now, so they can see what's in the drugs. They can test for that. There's Narcan. There's work that people like you guys do. So talked to Steve Rogers over at DART, and he credited, look, a lot of it, the border, we're controlling the drugs a little bit better, but we're doing a lot of work with our partners in the community, Narcan, obviously. So tell me your experience. Why do you think this is going down?
I love agencies like DART and law enforcement in general that are stopping it from coming in. It's great. We obviously have to keep doing that. I want to put that work that they're doing out of business, and we do that by implementing our services, because what we see at Racing for Recovery is when people heal and they start implementing a balanced, holistic lifestyle, they don't want to do drugs anymore. We can't tell people just quit doing that. That's not going to work. I think we've figured that out, hopefully, at this stage of the game. What we can do is educate people, provide a different way of looking at drug treatment, if you will, that people don't want to do drugs. I haven't wanted to drink or do drugs since April 15th of 1993. I can do drugs if I want to. I don't want to. Those are two different things. If somebody is restricting and struggling not to self-destruct, isn't the logical question, why do you want to hurt yourself, and how do we help you not think and feel that way? That's what we do.
Yeah. Let's go back to, I know you just kind of stepped out to see, what you guys are mostly dealing with. So let's repeat that. So what are you guys mostly dealing with now?
Our intakes at Racing for Recovery are more of the amphetamines, cocaine, methamphetamine. Meth is that's a thing it was here and it went away when the opioid crisis came in. Now that's back, but we're now seeing cocaine. It's like a resurgence of the 80s again, that's being added to it. And then alcohol and now weed is more than what it used to be, but alcohol has always been the staple. You're always going to have that, because that again, if you can't get methamphetamine now, well, you're going to drink. And I used to do that all the time. If I couldn't get my drug of choice, which was cocaine, I drank more. But again, going back to, if I was healing from some of the stuff that happened to me, I wouldn't have been choosing any of them. I would have kept playing hockey.
Yeah, I remember you used to play hockey. So we had touched on this. You guys are about to celebrate 25 years, and I'm sure it will be a celebration. But so how do the clients look different today that walk through the door than they did 24 years ago?
Over the quarter of a century, what I've seen that's different, that's a good question. I would say the level of trauma that happens after the initial trauma that they endured is getting really frightening. And now we're starting to get into human trafficking and selling selves for whatever. That is the stuff that really has been shocking and, on some cases, disturbing. When you see the other things involved in the drug world to get the drugs, that's something that, I mean, yes, it was going on back in my day, but it just seems it's at a higher level over the recent years. I'd say that's the most significant thing I've seen.
That's really interesting. So it was more singular. The problem might have been 24 years ago, other than the emotional. It's like, hey, I got the drug problem. But now they've got the drug problem and they've got the problem that, hey, I would have to sell my body to get these drugs.
Yeah, and I do this when I'm doing clinical groups a lot of times, especially with men, young boys who have been abused or whatever bad thing happened to them. In elementary school, you'll see them acting out with behavior issues. And what usually happens with that, they get medicated, they get pulled out of class, they're made an example of, which lowers the self-esteem that already existed because of the initial trauma. They get exposed to drugs in junior high school, they start using drugs, they find ways to get it, which leads to criminal activity, and they end up in a dark place. That again is what I'm trying to convey to people is we have to educate kids on the importance of self-esteem, even if they have been unfortunately gone through trauma. That's how we can eliminate this stuff. But to answer the question more directly, I'm using it as a metaphor of then all the other ripple effects that come in the drug world after a result of choosing drugs that lead to other problems. Having felonies on your record, so you can't get a job. So then you feel even worse about yourself, and they go back to using or criminal activity to cope with those thoughts. It's a snowball that starts from some initial negative impact that led to feelings that weren't dealt with, that led to negative choices to deal with those feelings, and it just exacerbates along the way. And that's something that is unique about Racing for Recovery's approach.
Well, it's interesting. You kind of mention like younger people that's starting at a very young age. I saw some story out of Cleveland, which was just shocking. It's like a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 8-year-old like kidnapped a 5-year-old girl, took her in a field, stripped her, raped her, hit her in the head with a rock. So you're mentioning it's kind of starting at a young age. I'm thinking like an 8-year-old not walking into Racing for Recovery. So how do you get to these kids before they're walking in as a 40-year-old?
We need treatment for kids. That's one of the goals, as you know, being the, dare I use the word CEO of Racing for Recovery. I want to grow us. I want to do more. And the more really is helping kids and helping families that have gone through some stuff. This is not a singular person. The person using drugs is not just the focus for us. That's one of the reasons why I started this format of having everybody included here, so everybody understands the impact of what this is doing to everybody in the family. I think we can do more in that, and that's one of the goals I want to do, because that again can reduce more of the drug usage.
Yeah. So we had talked about law enforcement briefly, but what more can they do? I mean, when I think about law enforcement, when we get the press releases, hey, we caught this guy who was selling drugs, you know, he threw him in jail, you know, he's going to get 20 years. What else can law enforcement do? Because it's more than just a crime problem. It's as you said, emotional.
It is. I want, when there's a legal issue, I want them to send them to Racing for Recovery to help. I'm not saying I'm against incarceration. I believe in punishment with help. You know, whether it's I don't know, where they you know, hang time over your head, so to speak. You know, if you don't stay sober, you know, this is going to follow. You know, that gives us an opportunity to do what we do. That again, it goes back to the person going, I don't want to sell drugs anymore. I don't want to take drugs anymore. A drug dealer usually is coming from the same type of trauma that a person who is using the drugs is. They just have a business acumen behind it. And I say that with a lot of seriousness and some sarcasm, because if you can take that mindset and use it to something applicable and productive, then we're doing what Racing for Recovery does. Yeah. You know, A drug dealer's a business person. They're just in the wrong field of business.
And you had mentioned alcohol kind of like being the look. It's pretty consistent over the years. We see it in the overdose deaths that it's involved with some of these other drugs. So talk about alcohol briefly. You know, I mean, cocaine, fentanyl, amphetamines get maybe the headlines, but alcohol still a big deal.
It's accepted. That's the short answer of it, and it's sad because when I see somebody drinking, I look at myself as a young kid. The first thing I did was drink alcohol to cope with how I was feeling, and it was accessible. It was in one of my best friend's parents' house. Now, again, am I saying that everybody that drinks alcohol is bad? No. But I am saying I wish parents and society would understand really what we're doing. You know, just because you can control something, let's be honest, it's a poison. It's not good for you in any capacity. We're spending money on it. People are dying in alcohol-related driving accidents. Every 30 minutes, someone is killed from drinking and driving. We don't even really talk about that anymore because we're saying, oh, we got a heroin problem. Well, how do you think they started doing heroin? They were drinking first. So, you know, with all due respect, I would like to see a world where any form of self-destruction with any substance was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned that, and you know, I don't have a drinking problem, but I just gave it up because my triglycerides have been off the chart. Even though I work out every single day, run 5 miles still, but it's still off the chart. Like you said, it's a poison. It's
Yep.
bad for your body. But there was still a time when I would come home very recently, you know, come home from work, hard day. I just want a beer to just take the edge off. So I get it.
I'd rather see people come home from a stressful day and have an apple and hang out with their kids. Right now, again, I'm not saying that the guy who has a beer is a terrible parent. I'm not saying that either, but why do we have to look at something that's bad? You know, we talk about, well, my triglycerides are this, or I had this medical thing happen that made me say I'm going to quit drinking. The healthy lifestyle can prevent some of those things from happening in the first place. You know, one of the things when people are talking about the physical things I do, when they find out that I'm almost 59 years old, they're like, how do you do all this? And it's back to, well, I don't do things anymore, put them in my body that are bad food, drugs or alcohol. It's constant. How is this going to help me? And it's been working for me for a while.
Did you say you're 58 or 59?
I'm 58. I'll be 59 in December. Yeah.
I'm 56.
It's easier to say 60 almost now at this point, you know.
It's hard to think of that, right? I mean, because again, I'm 56, and working out to me is so much more difficult than it was. I mean, you know, you take a wrong step, you know, you're laid up for a week. You know, I have no cartilage in my left knee. You know,
you have to. I figured out at this age, you know, again, we're talking what Racing for Recovery believes in, a balanced, holistic lifestyle. Even with exercise, I have applied chiropractic, massage, yoga, my plant-based nutrition. Those things have helped me to keep the party going, if you will. I may not be able to go as quickly as I used to, but I still get there. I watched the Ironman Hawaii for the women on Saturday, and an 80-year-old did it. And I'm like, that inspires me. 80 years old. So I see there's hope out there.
So you can still do it. You think you'll be doing it at 80?
I watched her. I thought I was done with the full Ironman a couple years ago, and I watched her Saturday, and I'm like, I want to do a full one again. I'd like to be doing it at that age. Because I'd like to be doing it, yeah.
So let me ask you this. So, 128 Ironman. You've done this all over the world. So when you see those communities, and I'm sure you're seeing the seedier side when you go to some of these areas, how do they compare to what you see in Toledo?
Great question. I've been fortunate to travel globally doing Ironmans. I've done them on 6 of the 7 continents, and especially Malaysia. Some of these countries, they have a no tolerance for drug usage. When I pitch the media about what we do, they're like, we don't have a need for that because we don't have it. That was interesting. Some of the other places where, and I sound like I'm criticizing the United States, I'm not, but better national health care that's out there, they don't have the necessary drug problems that we have. A couple countries that have legalized everything, and I'm not going to put myself out there to say that's the answer either, but I have seen a reduction in that. I want to make this clear too. I am not in favor of harm reduction when it comes to drugs and alcohol, because people can still die during that process. I want total abstinence of it. But it's been interesting learning from different cultures. Australia, for example, they are so focused on health and wellness that some of these other issues aren't as prominent as what maybe they are in the United States. So there's a myriad of factors of why people are choosing not to do them, and it's always health focused related, as opposed to trying to just stop it maybe the way that the United States has. So I'm open to anything and anything that's going to help.
So, okay, listening to you talk there and what you've learned from around the world, if you were the drug czar and you could, okay, I'm tackling the drug crisis in America, this is what I do, 1, 2, 3.
If that was my position, I would take it gladly, and I would focus on why people are hurting that are choosing any form of self-destruction. That's the focus to me. I've seen it work for me. When I finally accepted the impact that my mom killing herself when I was 3, when I really looked at that from a 3-year-old standpoint, not necessarily a 20-year-old man or a 58-year-old man, when I look at the hurt that people endure at the age of impact of some of this stuff, that's where we need to do surgery on people, if you will. That's the problem. We need to focus on that. When we're focusing over here on you got to quit doing drugs, and we've missed it. That does not solve the problem. What that does is take away, as we've said before, it eliminates one form of a problem and it just waits patiently for another one to come up. That's not solving the problem. That's just moving the problem around. The real source of recovery, if I was the guy in charge of this, I would conduct what we do here, and that is education on trauma, how it affects the body, the mind, the soul, and aiding them in a world of self-betterment through a balanced, holistic lifestyle. It works.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, and I think about how society is changing now, and look, I mean, we're seeing a lot more mass shooters, mass killings. We're seeing angry kids.
Yep.
I mean, I just don't think kids today, they're not like hopping on their bike and riding around the neighborhood, and coming in at 9 o'clock when, mom calls them.
Yep.
I mean, they're on their computer, they're on their phones. They've always got their phones attached to them. Is that part of the problem too? That people are so hooked into like social media and their phones, and they're just not enjoying life. And
I think a lot of this, it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with race or sexual orientation. It has to do with we have people and we have young kids who are hurting. Everybody's working now. Everybody's overworked. Everybody's frustrated. They're worried about health care. They're worried about where the next paycheck is going to come from in a lot of these cases. So if you're a person dealing with that individually, that's stress in of itself. Then if you're arguing with your spouse and your kids see that, the kid feels worthless. These are all emotional issues that then, little Johnny is looking on the internet, or he sees a mass shooting and thinks, I can get attention from some of this stuff. It's not saying to people, oh, these people are deranged. It's like, these people are hurting that are going to the extreme to try and cope with that hurt. Even mass shootings now. It's like giving a weather report. Oh, we had a mass shooting in Texas today, and people are sorry for about 20 minutes, and then they go on to the next thing. I'm like, wait a minute, you guys.
We've all become numb to it.
Yes.
It's just like you said, it's just a daily news report is like 6 people were killed in Amarillo, Texas today during a shooting at a bar. And it's like...
When I was expelled, and righteously so, for choosing to do cocaine in high school on a hockey bus, this was 1985. You would have thought I murdered 10,000 people or whatever. Now you have something like that happen, and the kid is welcome back into school, or they just, and it's like, hey guys, this is kind of a problem over here. And if it isn't addressed here with just cocaine now, it's going to exacerbate into, God forbid, some of the horrific things we're seeing now. And that's exactly what happens. It's unresolved hurt that is leading to these things. It's not just about drugs and alcohol anymore.
So you've been doing this for a while, Racing for Recovery 2001. Somebody walks in today and says, Todd, look, I wanna give up. I can't kick this demon. What do you say that today that's different than what you would have told that person 25 years ago?
First thing I say is I'm proud of you for having the self-esteem and the self-respect and the dignity and the courage to walk in here and ask for help. Just that. People don't understand the magnitude of doing that self-loving act of coming in and saying, I need help. That's huge. They're scared. They're embarrassed. They think they're weak for coming in and asking for help. And I stress that, and I can hear it in the tone of my voice right now. I want to encourage in them right off the bat, you made a great choice today. That if you consistently make that choice and apply what we're doing here, you're going to have everything that you see in this building. And it's not about money or materialistic things. It's self-love and education, some form of spirituality. Your friends and family are back in your life. You actually like yourself. That's what people are going to get when they come in here. And I knew that for me when I was initially getting sober. On day one, I knew I was never going to use again, and I knew I was going to do something. What I didn't know was how significant my pain was going to be an asset for tens of thousands of people around the globe. And that's what's different, that now we really hammer home to people coming in here. I know I sound different than the last time you interviewed me, because that's because of what I've learned, what I've seen in people, what I've been inspired by seeing in other people, and everybody that walks through that door is going to get that same type of compassion from our staff. Most of our staff are former clients that went through here. I'm proud of that.
In the last question I have, this is a story. Look, overdose deaths are declining, down 35%. What do you say to the families that might say, drug crisis is over?
I want to say that the wellness life is becoming more prominent. I'm taking the antithesis of that. The drug crisis is not over. The self-hurting is not over. What is happening is people are healing, and people are living, and people are being productive in their lives. That's what I want people to understand. But let's not give us a pass that it's over. It's not. Like I said, it's just changing forms. You have a reduction here. If you don't solve the problem, you have an increase over here. That means there's work to be done.
Yeah, and I guess something you just mentioned there, when you talk about cyclical, why is it cyclical? Why is cocaine popular, 10 years ago, and now maybe, it's growing more popular now, but...
I'm going to give credit to law enforcement for that. They're great at stopping one form of self-destruction. That's not the total answer. It's like a kid that gets an A in algebra but is not doing so well in science. We got to pick up the science. We have to cover all those classes, meaning all the forms of self-destruction, and eliminate the the desire to use them. Then we don't need law enforcement to do that.
So I think it's kind of what you had mentioned earlier, that it's kind of like whack-a-mole.
Totally.
Like we're gonna focus on fentanyl, and then
Yeah,
pop,
something else comes up.
But
Even I've talked about this in a couple of the books that I've written, that my own journey, I get accused of just being addicted to Ironman. It's like, no, it's not addiction. It's looking for something. At times I was looking for it, honestly, that it was filling my void. I was horrible with money. When I first got sober, I was spending to try and fill that need. I see that a lot with people that come in here. They want to get back to work right away, and it's not usually to take care of their bills. It's to buy things they don't need. I was guilty of that. And again, through healing, you realize I don't need 10 pairs of Jordans. I need to pay my court fines, and then I need to save for college. And you start learning how to manage money, manage what you're eating and what you're not eating. Sometimes we'll see people who will come in and they can develop some eating issues, eating too much to cope with some of this stuff, not eating enough to cope with some of this stuff. So again, I want people to understand that what we're doing here is mental wellness. I don't even like saying mental health, mental and spiritual and emotional wellness. And that comes from understanding really what sobriety is and what it isn't. Sobriety is more than just not using drugs. Sobriety truly is about healing and living to our full potential. That's what I got sober for.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, let me get a cutaway or two.
Dude,
and again,
you were asking me that was great.